That morning I buried my husband. By afternoon my son looked me in the eye and said, "Get out. You have nothing left here." They thought I was weak, finished, forgotten, but they forgot I signed the final name on everything. If you think this is just another family drama, you're wrong. Subscribe now to catch more of our gripping stories coming next. The fog was thick that morning, thicker than milk clinging to the trees, like it had nowhere else to be. It muffled everything. The bird song, the wind, even the sound of tires crunching gravel beneath the weight of the black SUV. The road was narrow, flanked by pine and silence, and for a long while the only sound inside the car was the soft hum of the engine and the tick of a turn signal that never led to a turn. Madeline Clark sat in the back seat, her hands folded neatly over a small, time-worn object, her late husband's pocket watch. The gold plating had dulled the chain frayed, but she held it the way a mother might hold a newborn, gently, reverently, as if even her breath might cause it to vanish. The ride had been quiet, too quiet. Erica, her daughter, sat in the passenger seat, flipping through her phone, her legs crossed in those crisp white slacks that never seemed to wrinkle. Simon, the son-in-law, drove without speaking, his jaw-tight eyes focused far beyond the curves of the road. No one talked about Leo. No one talked about the funeral that had happened less than 48 hours ago. The church filled with lilies and dust and people Madeline barely recognized. No one asked if she had slept, if she had eaten, if she had woken up screaming like she had the night before. They had said, "Let's get away from the noise," and she had nodded. They had said, "It'll be good for you, Mom," and she had smiled. She wanted to believe them. She wanted to believe in kindness, in concern, in the possibility that maybe, just maybe, her daughter wanted to take care of her the way she once did for Erica when she scraped her knees on the front steps or had her first heartbreak at 17. But there was something else in the car that morning, not just fog, distance, a kind that had been growing for years quietly like rot behind drywall. The SUV slowed down. Madeline looked up. They had turned onto a dirt road, narrow, uneven, half swallowed by the woods. No signs, no mailbox, no lights. "Where are we?" she asked, her voice barely louder than a whisper. Erica turned around, smile too tight, too sweet. "Just a little place Simon found. It's peaceful, remote, good for rest." Madeline frowned. "I thought we were going to the lake house." Simon didn't respond. The trees got denser. The sky seemed to sink lower. Finally, the car stopped in front of a cabin, if you could call it that. The wood was gray with age, the roof sagging slightly under a weight of damp pine needles. One window was cracked. The front door hung crooked on its hinges. No smoke, no lights, no sign of recent life. Madeline blinked. This isn't the lake house," she said. Erica got out of the car and opened the rear door, reaching for Madeline's purse. "I think you'll like it here," she said too brightly. "It's quiet. You need quiet." Simon came around the back, popped the trunk, and placed one single small suitcase on the porch. "But this looks abandoned," Madeline murmured. "There's no phone line, no neighbors, no lights." "You'll be okay," Simon said. She turned to him. "Okay, Simon, what is this?" He didn't answer. Madeline looked to her daughter. Erica didn't meet her eyes. "Just for a few days," Erica said, already stepping back toward the car. "You said you didn't want to be around too many people right now." "I meant I needed time with family." "You've been through a lot," Erica said. "You're overwhelmed. It's best for everyone if you have space to process." Madeline's throat tightened. "You're leaving me here." Erica paused, then nodded once. "We'll come back when you've had time." The door of the SUV slammed shut. Madeline took a step forward. "Wait, Erica, please." "Mom," Erica said, her tone firm now. "You said you didn't want to be a burden." And then she smiled, that awful empty smile. "Now you don't have to be." Madeline reached for the door as Simon reversed. Gravel spat from beneath the tires. She stumbled backward. Her slippers slipped on the mossy step. She caught herself on the porch rail. The SUV disappeared into the mist without another word, and then there was only fog, and birds, and the tick of Leo's watch. She turned toward this cabin, tried the doorknob, locked. She checked under the mat. Nothing. She pounded once, twice, 3 times. No one answered. Of course no one answered. She pulled her coat tight around her shoulders, took slow, trembling steps down the stairs and around the cabin's side. The back window was boarded shut. The rain barrel was empty. The outhouse door creaked in the wind. Her heart pounded like a drum. She reached for her pocket, no phone. They'd taken her phone. Of course they had. No flashlight. No matches. Just Leo's watch ticking faintly like it too was trying to escape the silence. Madeline sat on the porch step staring into the fog. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a miscommunication. This was abandonment. Erica and Simon had taken her out here under the guise of healing. But what they really wanted, what they had planned, was to get rid of her. Neatly, quietly, without scandal, without guilt. Just tuck her into the woods like an old coat that didn't fit anymore. For a moment her mind reeled. This couldn't be real. But it was, because Leo was gone. And now so was she. She stood again shakily, her bones aching from the cold already seeping into her joints. She looked down at the thin slippers on her feet, Leo's slippers. She had been wearing them since the funeral. They didn't fit quite right, but she hadn't been able to take them off, as if his warmth still lingered in them, as if she might lose him for real the moment she stepped out of them. She stepped off the porch. The fog swallowed her whole. Her breath was loud in her ears. Her hands shook. She moved forward without direction, without plan, without reason. Just away. Away from that awful cabin. Away from the echo of tires and betrayal. Branches clawed at her coat. Twigs snapped beneath her feet. The silence was complete. Even the birds had gone still. It felt like walking through a dream you couldn't wake up from, except this dream had splinters and cold and no end in sight. After a while, minutes, hours, she stumbled. Her knee hit a root hard. She cried out, gasping. The watch flew from her hand, landing somewhere in the moss. "No, no, no," she whispered, crawling through the underbrush. "Leo." She found it scratched but still ticking and cradled it to her chest like a child. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to no one. Her voice cracked. The fog grew thicker. Then a sound, distant, like something moving on water. She froze, every muscle in her body tightening. Was it an animal, a hallucination? Then again closer, the rhythmic slap of wood on water. A lantern glowed in the distance, faint, yellow, moving. She pushed through the last of the brush, stumbled to the edge of the river. A rowboat, and in it a man with strong arms and a familiar hunch to his shoulders. He saw her, stopped rowing. Their eyes met. He squinted. "Miss Clark." She blinked. "Tommy." He rowed closer, the boat slicing gently through the fog. His face was older now, bearded, lined with sun and sorrow. But the eyes, those soft brown eyes, hadn't changed since 10th grade. Since the day he ran out of class crying because no one remembered his birthday. Except her. "God damn," he said, pulling up to shore. "What the hell are you doing out here?" She opened her mouth. But no words came. She simply held up the watch, and then she collapsed. The lantern swung gently from the edge of the boat, casting fractured light onto the fog-shrouded riverbank. Ripples glimmered like whispers in the darkness. Tommy pushed his oars deep into the water with the kind of rhythm that came from years of ferrying through silence. The fog wrapped around him like a second skin, damp and intimate. He wasn't expecting to find anything or anyone out this far out. Then he saw her. A woman collapsed at the edge of the bank, curled in on herself like something broken. Her gray hair was plastered to her cheeks with moisture, and her arms clutched something to her chest, a glint of gold ticking faintly in the dark. He squinted. "Miss Clark," he called, unsure of his own voice. No answer. He brought the boat in closer, the bow nudging against the soft, marshy earth. He hopped out boots, sinking slightly into the mud, and jogged up the short incline. "Miss Clark," he said again, softer this time, crouching beside her, Madeline. Her eyes fluttered open. For a moment they were clouded with confusion, pain, then recognition. Her lips trembled. "Tommy," she whispered, barely audibly. He exhaled hard through his nose. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. "Come on." She was light, too light. Her coat was soaked through and her hands were freezing, but her grip on the pocket watch never loosened, not once. He carried her down to the boat, wrapped her in a wool blanket from under the bench, and rowed. The river was quiet but restless. The oars sliced through it cleanly, but each pull was heavy with thought. What the hell had happened? Why was she out here alone in slippers in the goddamn woods? He stole glances at her face between strokes. Her jaw clenched tight, her breath uneven, but her eyes never closed again. Not once. The boat reached the dock in Woodhaven just as the moon broke through the cloud cover. His cabin stood up the hill, 2 stories of stubborn lumber and mismatched shingles wrapped in ivy, and the kind of silence that didn't ask questions. He carried her up the creaking steps and nudged open the front door with his shoulder. The warmth hit her first, then the scent, cedar old coffee and something else, cinnamon maybe. It was messy in a lived-in way. Books stacked in corners, boots by the fireplace, a jacket hung on the back of a kitchen chair. A real home, not the kind with clean lines and empty picture frames. He laid her gently on the worn leather couch and crouched to light the fire. "You're safe," he said without looking at her. The flame caught. Shadows flickered. Madeline blinked against the light. He moved to the stove, filled a kettle, and set it on. Then he turned. "You remember me?" he asked. Her voice was hoarse but steady. "Tommy Ellis, 10th grade. You used to fall asleep in my literature class." He barked a short laugh, guilty. "You hated Poe. I hated everything back then. Except drawing," she added, and something soft crept into her expression. His smile faltered. "You remember that?" She nodded, still holding Leo's watch like a lifeline. "You doodled on the margins of every test. You were the only one who didn't mark me down for it. You had talent," she said simply, "and no one else saw it." The kettle began to whine. He moved to pour the water into 2 chipped mugs, dropping in tea bags like muscle memory. He handed one to her and pulled up the armchair across from the fire. "I can't believe it's you," he said. "When I saw you there, I thought I was seeing a ghost." "You almost were." He looked up sharply. She sipped her tea. Her fingers trembled slightly, but not from the heat. "They left me," she said, eyes fixed on the flames. "My daughter and her husband took me out to a cabin, said I needed rest, then drove away." Tommy didn't speak. "I thought they were helping," she continued. "Thought after Leo died they just wanted me to breathe. But it wasn't about peace. It was about getting rid of me." Her voice didn't rise, didn't shake. That made it worse. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "You're here now." But why, she asked, not to him. Not really. What do you do with someone like me, an old woman with no home, no plan, no one left? "You start over," he said without hesitation. She laughed bitterly. At 71, Tommy sat back. "You remember the day I quit school?" Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Yes. They told me I wasn't going to make it, that I was wasting my time, that I'd be nothing. You believed them?" "For a while." He took a sip. "Until I didn't." Silence wrapped around them, not cold this time, not cruel. She looked around the room, really looked. The drawings pinned to the far wall, the stack of sketchbooks, the ferry schedule scrawled on a dry erase board by the fridge. "You live alone." "Always have." "No family." "Somewhere," he said. "But I stopped keeping count a long time ago." She ran her thumb along the edge of the watch. "You ferried me away from that place like Karen on the sticks." He snorted, never liked that comparison. "Why not?" "Because he never turned around." That pulled a smile from her. She didn't say thank you, not yet. But she didn't have to. It hung between them, warm as the fire. Later, when she fell asleep on the couch, still holding Leo's watch in her hands, Tommy covered her with another blanket and sat back down in the chair. He watched her for a while, listened to the slow rhythm of her breath. In the quiet, memories returned uninvited. She had been the only teacher who looked him in the eye, who asked if he'd eaten lunch, who slipped him granola bars and paperback novels, who called the principal when she saw bruises on his arms. They called her the soft one behind her back. But Tommy had known better. She was the only adult who hadn't turned away. And now here she was, returned to him in the middle of the night like some divine reversal. He didn't believe in fate, not really. But this felt like something more than chance. The fire cracked softly. The fog outside thickened, pressing against the windows like regret. Tommy turned off the lamp but left the fire burning, just in case she woke in the night unsure of where she was, just in case she needed light to find her way back. The next morning the fog had not yet lifted, but Madeline woke up warmer than she had in days. She didn't remember falling asleep, only the sound of the fire, the smell of tea, and the sense that for the first time since Leo's funeral, her chest wasn't just a hollow room echoing his name. Tommy was already up, of course. She found him in the kitchen humming some old bluegrass tune, frying eggs in a cast-iron pan. "I made too many," he said without turning around. "Sit down." She sat. Neither of them spoke much. But when the plates were clean and the silence had settled back in like a worn coat, he said, "I want to show you something." To show. They took the truck. It was barely 20 minutes outside town, the roads winding and framed with pine. The gravel crunched beneath the tires as they turned into a small clearing where an old weathered building stood. "Used to be a tea house," Tommy said as he cut the engine. Madeline stepped out of the truck and inhaled deeply. There was something strange in the air here. Not just pine or river or the dampness of moss-covered stone. No, this was something quieter, older. Memory. The building itself had seen better days, peeling white paint, cracked windows, rust on the hinges. But the bones were good. The sign was still hanging by one crooked chain, letters faded but legible Willow's Cup. Madeline ran her hand along the railing, flaking old paint beneath her fingertips. "It's been empty since the Hendricks moved out," Tommy said, adjusting his cap. "I ferry past it most weeks. Just thought maybe you'd want to see it." She didn't answer at first, just walked to the steps, creaking under her weight, and opened the door. It groaned like a protest. Inside, dust cobwebs overturned chairs, but through the grime she saw lace curtains still hanging in one window, a shelf of forgotten mugs, a faded mural of wildflowers on the back wall, and in the center of the room a single table with 2 chairs still standing. She walked to it, sat down. The sunlight broke through a crack in the ceiling and fell right across the tabletop. She placed Leo's watch there and stared at it. Then she whispered, "This is it." Tommy stood by the door, watching her with cautious hope. "What do you mean?" She looked up, eyes sharper than they'd been in days. "This is where I start over." The next 2 weeks blurred in motion and sweat. Tommy found the keys from the old realtor in town, and just like that the lease was signed under her name. He offered to co-sign. She declined. Said if she was going to fail, she'd do it wearing her own name. They spent the mornings clearing cobwebs, scrubbing tile, sanding windowsills. The afternoons were spent painting soft sage green for the walls, warm honeywood for the trim. Tommy built a new signpost by hand, while Madeline tested tea blends with trembling fingers and a stubborn resolve. She found Leo's old recipe book in the bottom of her suitcase. Worn leather cover margin notes in his looping script. Pages stained with cinnamon and honey. Her throat caught when she turned to the page marked Comfort Blend, his favorite. Chamomile rosehip, a touch of vanilla bean. She brewed it one rainy afternoon, took a sip, closed her eyes, and cried, not from grief this time, but from recognition. When the paint dried and the furniture was in place, she stood by the front window with the new sign in her hands. Whispering leaves. She thought of the way tea leaves moved in hot water. Not violently, not loud, just gently, softly, like whispers from a life you were trying to remember. The name felt right. The town was skeptical at first. Woodhaven wasn't exactly booming. The tourists were few, and the regulars liked their habits. But on opening day, Madeline set out a small chalkboard sign by the road. "Come in, sit, breathe, tea's on." And then she waited. The first visitor was a woman named Claire. Late 30s, no wedding ring, shadows under her eyes and a toddler on her hip. "I don't drink tea," Claire said when she stepped in. "That's all right," Madeline replied. "You can just sit." Claire stayed for 40 minutes, didn't say much, just rocked her child while looking out the window. Before she left, she said, "This place doesn't feel like a shop." "What does it feel like?" Madeline asked. Claire thought, "Like something I forgot I needed." She came back 3 days later, alone, ordered chamomile. The second visitor was a man named Arthur, veteran, 60s, cane in hand, sarcasm in voice. This used to be the spot, he grumbled. Scones were dry as bone, but the lady gave out free refills. "I don't have scones yet," Madeline said, "but I've got lemon cookies and too much silence." He grunted and took a seat, returned the next week with his chessboard. The third visitor wasn't really a visitor, more like a shadow, a teenage boy in a gray hoodie who never looked anyone in the eye. He'd show up, linger near the bookshelf, then vanish. One day, Madeline left a cup on the corner of the table where he always hovered. Just a note for when you're ready. No questions asked. He took it. The next day, he left a thank you note on a napkin. Name Kyle. Madeline worked quietly, methodically. She scrubbed counters until her wrists ached. She folded napkins with the same care she once gave to packing Erica's lunches. She started baking again, just simple things. Oatmeal cookies, banana bread. Leo's blueberry loaf. The wall above the register became her quiet wall. She tacked up little notes, guests left behind. Crayon drawings, quotes, Polaroids. A poem scrawled on a receipt. One note read, "Today was the first time I exhaled in weeks." She stared at it for a long time before pinning it. Each guest brought their story, though most didn't tell it outright. She didn't push. She offered tea and time. Let the room do the work. Let the air breathe for them when they forgot how. The mother who cried when her baby finally slept in her arms. The widower who said Leo's blend reminded him of his wife's perfume. The boy who asked if she had Wi-Fi, then ended up reading Steinbeck from the shelf. None of them knew about the cabin, about the abandonment, about the funeral that split her life clean in two. They didn't need to. What mattered was the steam curling from their mugs, the stillness between words, the unspoken relief in their shoulders. She was rebuilding, not just a shop, herself, one leaf at a time. It started with a letter. The envelope was cream-colored, thick embossed along the edges. Too elegant, too staged. No return address, but the handwriting on the front was unmistakable Erica's. All loops and rigid cursive, the same way she used to label her school folders in 6th grade. Madeline turned it over in her hands for a long time before opening it. Inside, only a few lines. "Mom, I know things ended badly. I've been thinking about you a lot. Can we meet? I'd like to talk. Love, Erica." There was a phone number, not her old one, a burner maybe, or a fresh start, or bait. Tommy saw the tension in her shoulders before she said anything. He was fixing the screen door, crouched low, screwdriver between his teeth. "You okay?" he asked without looking up. She folded the letter once, then again. "Erica wants to meet." The screwdriver dropped with a clink. He looked up. "Now," Madeline nodded. Tommy didn't answer right away, just leaned back on his heels and squinted at the road like he expected a shadow to materialize. "She say why?" "No, just that she's been thinking about me." "That's dangerous." "I know." They arrived 2 days later. Not in the SUV, but in a silver rental. Clean, sterile, too shiny for Woodhaven. Simon stepped out first, wearing a blazer, loafers a smile that didn't touch his eyes. Erica followed, looking thinner, drawn around the edges. Her hair was shorter now, professionally styled, and her smile, when it appeared, was practiced. "Mom," she said, moving in for a hug. Madeline allowed it, just barely. "You look good," Erica said, stepping back. "Really good." "I'm working," Madeline replied. "It helps." Simon held a paper bag like it was an offering. "We brought pastries. From that place you liked in Charleston. I liked their bread pudding, not the croissants." A beat of silence. "Oh," Simon said sheepishly. "Well, still, thought you'd enjoy." They stepped inside, whispering leaves. Madeline guided them to a corner table near the back. Tommy, who had been sanding a chair leg by the fireplace, didn't get up, but he didn't leave either. Erica glanced around the room. "It's lovely, cozy, very you." Simon nodded, tranquil. "I can see why you stayed." "I didn't stay," Madeline said. "I built." Tommy raised an eyebrow at that, almost smiled. They sat. She poured tea without asking. Simon took a sip, then cleared his throat. "We've been going through a lot. The cabin. Things got complicated." "Did it?" she asked. Erica leaned in. "We were wrong, Mom. About how we left things. About how we treated you. I've been thinking a lot. About forgiveness." Madeline's hand dipped subtly beneath the table and pressed the side of her purse. Inside her phone screen glowed faintly. Voice memos recording. She said nothing, just listened. Simon reached across the table. "I know you're hurt, but we were trying to help. We thought space would let you heal. You thought isolation would bring clarity," she said flatly. No, Erica said quickly. "It wasn't like that. We were overwhelmed, and the cabin, it wasn't our idea alone. It was suggested." "By who?" Erica hesitated. "A therapist. A spiritual advisor." "Ah," Madeline said. "One of those silent treatments. Simon chuckled as if it were a joke. Madeline didn't laugh. Tommy stood slowly, wiped his hands on his jeans, and walked out the front door. Erica shifted. Is he staying here with you? No, Madeline said. He works here. He watches out for me. Simon leaned back. Well, I hope he's trustworthy. He pulled me out of the woods when you left me for dead, Madeline said, her voice sharp, deliberate. I trust him more than I trust the people who share my blood. Erica blinked. Madeline softened barely. So, what do you want? Simon looked to Erica. She gave him a small nod. He cleared his throat. Things haven't been great. Business is slowing down. The market's volatile. We had to sell the Charleston condo. And there's this opportunity back in Mississippi real estate, actually, but we'd need someone on the paperwork with experience. Someone like me. Well, with your name, your record, it would open doors, Simon said quickly. You'd be protected, of course. Limited liability. Madeline leaned back in her chair. Let the silence bloom. Then you want me to co-sign something? It's nothing major, Erica added. Just a step toward rebuilding, together. Madeline smiled. A small, tight smile. Of course. Later that night, Tommy found her on the back steps of the shop, staring into the trees with the look of a woman waiting for something to leap from the shadows. You didn't believe a word of that, he said, handing her a cup of tea. Not one. He sat beside her. So what now? I told them they could stay. A few days, while they find clarity. He turned to her slowly. Are you out of your mind? She sipped the tea. Let's see what they do when they think I've let my guard down. Tommy whistled low. You're playing with fire. I used to play with trust, she said. That nearly killed me. Fire seems safer. He didn't argue. The next morning, Simon was already downstairs before the sun. He claimed he couldn't sleep, said the mattress was too firm, said he thought he'd help out. Madeline found him behind the counter, flipping through a drawer of receipts. I was looking for tea strainers, he said smoothly. They're in the cabinet, nowhere near the ledger. He smiled. I got turned around. She nodded. Of course. That afternoon he offered to help with inventory, then cleaning, then organizing the back office. Each offer wrapped in charm and syrup, but his eyes never stopped moving, darting from shelf to shelf, clock to clock, corner to corner. Tommy watched him like a hawk. That evening after closing, he pulled up a website on his laptop and beckoned Madeline over. Take a look, he said, pointing. It was a property record, the deed to the cabin, transferred 3 months ago. New owner S&E Investments, LLC. Managing partners Simon and Erica Hayes. Madeline stared at the screen. They bought the cabin. No, Tommy said. They bought it with your money. Her chest tightened. He scrolled. Guess whose name was forged on the escrow documents? She didn't answer. Didn't have to. Tommy closed the laptop. Lawyer, he asked. Madeline nodded. Eyes sharp now. Sharper than they'd been in years. It happened on a Tuesday. The kind of afternoon when the light fell golden through the windows of whispering leaves and the entire tea shop smelled like lemon zest and clove. Claire was seated in her usual spot by the bookshelf, rocking her daughter while reading a magazine. Arthur sat near the fireplace, muttering at his chessboard. Kyle, the boy with the hoodie, had started helping stock napkins. Madeline stood behind the counter, arranging a new set of china on a tray. It was a quiet day. Serene, even. Then Simon walked in, too loud for the space and too polite to be sincere. He had on that same blazer, a faint sheen of sweat on his forehead, despite the coolness outside. Erica trailed behind him, her face tighter than usual, like she'd been biting down on her own tongue all morning. Mind if we join you for tea, Mom? He asked. Madeline gestured toward the table in the corner. Pick your seat. You'll only need it for a minute. Simon blinked. Oh, planning to toss us out already? She didn't respond. She brought over 3 cups, hers included, and poured slowly. Jasmine for Erica, Earl Grey for Simon, chamomile for herself. Simon reached for the sugar jar, stirred it absently, then smiled. You've done well here. I mean, for something this modest. Honestly impressive. Madeline took her seat, folded her hands. You know, she began, I've been thinking a lot about legacy lately. Simon raised an eyebrow. Erica froze. Funny how it changes over time. Madeline continued. I used to think legacy was just the things we passed down. Furniture, recipes, a little money if we were lucky. And now Erica asked, voice low. Madeline looked at her daughter directly. Now I know it's about what we refuse to pass down. Simon laughed softly. Bit poetic for a tea shop. I updated my will, Madeline said flatly. Erica inhaled. Simon set down his cup. Come again, he said. I changed my will, Madeline repeated. Last week. The new version doesn't include either of you. Erica's mouth opened then closed. Simon stared at her. Why would you do that? He asked, too calm. Madeline tilted her head. You know why. Simon stood abruptly, and in the motion his elbow hit the teacup. It flew sideways and shattered against the hardwood floor with a sharp silencing crack. Claire jumped. Kyle ducked instinctively. Arthur looked up alert. The room froze. Simon breathed hard through his nose, then bent down to pick up the broken porcelain. Sorry, he muttered. Clumsy. Tommy was there before Madeline could move, stepping between Simon and the shards. I've got it, he said, his voice like steel wrapped in flannel. Simon met his eyes, didn't move, then after a beat backed off. Apologies, Simon said to the room. Didn't mean to disrupt your peace. Madeline stood slowly. Maybe you should take a walk, Simon. Cool off. I'm fine. Walk anyway. He stared at her. Something flickered in his expression. Anger, yes, but also calculation. Then he turned, pushed the door open, and stepped into the wind. Erica remained seated. Her fingers gripped the hem of her sweater. She didn't speak. Madeline sat again, poured more tea. Across the room, customers pretended to return to their business, but their eyes kept flicking back. Whispering Leaves had never had a scene before, until now. Later that evening, when the last guest left, Tommy locked the front door and turned to her. We need to move, he said. I already have, she answered. He raised an eyebrow. I emailed David Martin, she added. Leo's old attorney. He's retired now, but he knows everything. I asked him to recommend someone sharp, someone who doesn't blink. Tommy smiled. Good, because Simon's not going to back down. And Erica, she's either complicit or deluded. Either way, it's dangerous. Madeline exhaled. I think she really believes they did it for me. That's how manipulation works, he said. Wrap the poison in pretty paper. She didn't argue. The next morning a car pulled up just after 9. Sleek, black, discreet. A woman stepped out mid-40s in dark jeans and a tailored coat. Her hair was short and silver at the roots face, like someone who didn't lose cases, just patience. She extended a hand. Margot Flint, you must be Madeline. I must, Madeline said, shaking her hand firmly. Tommy showed her to the back table. He brought coffee. Margot declined tea. Let's start with the basics, she said, flipping open her leather folio. I've reviewed the deed transfer of the cabin. Red flags all over it. The notary stamp doesn't match the official registry. The date of transfer coincides with the date of your husband's hospice approval. Convenient. Madeline nodded. I never signed anything. That's what we're going to prove, Margot said. Also, we're looking at elder financial abuse, fraudulent conveyance, and possibly intentional infliction of emotional distress. Tommy whistled low from the kitchen. Madeline didn't blink. Margot slid a page across the table. I'll need every record you've got. Voicemails, letters, any digital footprint. Do you have the original will? I do. Updated bank statements. Yes. And screenshots of their text messages, too. Including the one where Erica says, Mom doesn't need to deal with numbers anymore. Margot smiled slightly. That's very helpful. She paused, then leaned forward. Are you ready for this? She asked. They're going to fight back. Simon's smart, slippery. He'll spin it. He'll play the victim. He'll weaponize your age. Madeline looked her straight in the eye. Let him, she said. I have nothing left to lose. The next week became a slow-burning war. Simon kept trying to charm his way back into her good graces. He offered to repaint the front window, fix the leaky pipe, just little things, he said with a smile. Let me be useful. But every night Madeline and Tommy scanned the shop for signs of snooping. Papers slightly moved. Drawers that weren't shut quite right. One night she found a thumb drive tucked behind the sugar canisters. Tommy took it apart. It had tracking software. Margot filed an official inquiry with the county clerk's office, then sent a letter of intent to Simon and Erica's joint email, a professional warning. Simon didn't say a word. But the next morning the salt shaker had been filled with sugar, and her checkbook was missing. Madeline didn't panic. She called Margot. They ordered a forensic financial review. By Friday, Madeline had compiled a full binder labeled indexed dated. Letters, transaction records, photographs, even her old diary entries, the ones where she noted strange bank withdrawals and Erica's accidental miscommunications. She stared at the cover of the binder for a long time before sliding it across the table to Margot. "This is everything," she said. Margot nodded. "Good. Now we begin." It was some time past midnight when Madeline heard the knock. Not a firm one, not insistent, just soft, timid, like memory. She rose from bed, wrapped herself in her old knit shawl, and padded barefoot across the wooden floor. The knock came again, slower this time. When she opened the door to the back porch, Erica was there barefoot too. Her hair undone, face streaked with tears and mascara breath visible in the cool night air. "I couldn't sleep," Erica whispered. Madeline said nothing, just stood in the doorway blocking the warmth behind her. Erica's hands trembled at her sides. I didn't know where else to go." "You're already here," Madeline said quietly. Erica looked down. "I'm sorry for everything." Still, Madeline didn't move. The silence between them stretched like an old wire pulled taut by years of things unsaid. "I never meant to hurt you," Erica whispered. We were drowning Mom. The business Simon kept promising it would turn around. That the cabin was just temporary. That you'd understand once things settled." "You left me," Madeline said, voice calm. "You left me in the woods with no phone, no food, and told yourselves it was healing." Erica shook her head violently. I know. I didn't know how far it had gone. I didn't know he changed the deed until after. I swear." Madeline looked past her into the night. "You signed the accounts over. I didn't know what else to do," Erica cried. "We had debt collectors showing up at the house. Simon was hiding the books from me. I thought if we could just stabilize, if I could just breathe." "You used me to breathe," Madeline said. "You built a raft out of my name." Erica sank to her knees on the porch boards. "I was scared," she sobbed. "I didn't know who to be without him. And then he said we could fix it, that we could come here and you—" Her voice cracked. "You were strong again, and I hated that I needed you to be weak." Madeline closed her eyes. Just for a moment. Just long enough to feel Leo's watch ticking in the drawer by her bed. Just long enough to remember Erica at 6 laughing on the river dock tangled in fishing line, asking what clouds tasted like. She opened her eyes again. "Do you remember who you were?" she asked softly. Erica blinked. "You used to leave poems on the fridge," Madeline continued. "You would cry when you saw dogs abandoned on the street. You were kind to every cashier, every waiter, every lonely kid in class. You hated injustice. You used to tell me I was your lighthouse. Erica gasped, "I still want to be that person." Madeline stepped forward, reached down, lifted her daughter from the porch boards, her hands cold against Erica's damp skin. Erica fell against her like a wave, full-bodied sobs, chest-heaving arms wrapping desperately around her mother's back. Madeline held her through the cries, held her through the shame, held her as the wind stirred the old wind chime into a soft, broken lullaby. But only for a moment. Then gently she stepped back. "I forgive you," Madeline said. "But forgiveness is not return." Erica stared at her. Madeline's voice was steady now, firm. "I will not pretend nothing happened. I will not invite the wolf back in because it remembered it once had fur." Erica's lips parted, but no sound came. "You are still my daughter," Madeline said, "but you do not get to be my keeper anymore." From the other side of the garden window, Tommy stood still, silent. He had paused mid-wipe on the window frame, rag in one hand, leaning slightly forward, as though the glass itself was holding its breath. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. Madeline turned toward the house. "Come inside," she said to Erica. "Warm up, then pack your things." Erica's face crumbled again, but she nodded. Later, after the tea kettle had whistled and the mugs were set on the kitchen table, Madeline returned to her bedroom. She opened the drawer. There it was, Leo's watch. Gold edges dulled with time, still ticking, still counting down a life that had once beat beside hers. She sat on the edge of the bed, fingers curling around the warm metal. There was something about the weight of it. Not just time, not just memory, but direction. She remembered the first time Leo gave it to her to hold back when he was diagnosed. He'd said, "When you get lost, hold this. It doesn't point north, but it'll point to you." She clutched it now like a compass. Somewhere inside something stilled. Not silence, not yet peace, but knowing. The courthouse in Woodhaven wasn't grand. No white marble steps or soaring pillars, just red bricks weathered by time and truth, a modest flag fluttering from a metal pole and a bench outside, where generations had waited for things to begin or end. But that morning it stood tall in Madeline's eyes. She walked up the steps with Margot at her side, dressed in charcoal gray papers tucked neatly into a leather case. Tommy followed behind them, silent and steady. Erica was not there, by Madeline's request. Inside, the clerk took the documents without surprise. Margot had already pre-filed electronically, but formality still required human hands. Complaint for fraudulent conveyance, she told the clerk. With attachments forged, deed power of attorney documents, and elder financial abuse affidavits. The clerk stamped the papers with 3 firm thuds. Each sound rang like punctuation. "It's official," Margot said, glancing sideways at Madeline. Madeline nodded once. "Then let's shine some light." News traveled fast in a small town. By the next morning, the rumors had already moved from barbershops to bakeries. The sweet old lady at the tea shop, her own daughter and son-in-law, tried to steal everything she had. Forged documents left her in the woods. Tommy caught wind of it first. He heard 2 women at the hardware store whispering over a paint sample display. "I heard he changed her will himself. She's the one who serves chamomile with fresh mint, right?" By noon, the sheriff's department made their move. Deputy Carter showed up at Whispering Leaves in plain clothes, but still with a badge clipped to his hip. He didn't interrupt the customers, just nodded politely and asked if he could speak with Madeline out back. They sat on the porch. "I've read the paperwork," Carter said. "It's solid, but I'll need statements. From you, from your lawyer, and from anyone else who saw what happened." "Claire was there the day Simon broke the cup," Madeline said. "So was Arthur, and Kyle's seen him snooping around after hours. We'll take them all." Carter paused. "I've known your family a long time, Miss Clark. Erica used to play at my sister's house when y'all lived near Willow Creek. It's hard to hear." "It was harder to live," Madeline replied. Carter nodded slowly. "I believe you." Simon was arrested 4 days later. It was early before sunrise. The sheriff's cruiser rolled up quietly to the inn where Simon and Erica had been staying. No lights, no sirens. Just a knock on the door and then the cold click of steel on wrists. Charges: fraud, forgery, exploitation of the elderly, and obstruction. Erica wasn't arrested. Not yet. She stood behind the screen door, arms crossed over her chest, watching her husband disappear into the car like a man who still thought he could lawyer his way out of anything. Madeline didn't watch the arrest in person. She didn't need to. Instead, she sat in the back of Whispering Leaves, gently steeping her morning blend as the sunrise broke through the fog. When Tommy told her it was done, she nodded once, just once, and said good. A week later, Margot arranged for a hearing. Erica appeared with a public defender. She looked thinner, grayer, but not broken. The judge offered probation in lieu of jail time, supervised release community service, and a mandated financial restitution plan. Madeline chose not to oppose it. Afterward, Erica approached her in the courthouse hallway, eyes red but dry. "I'm doing the work," she said. "I swear I'm not lying this time." Madeline studied her carefully. "I believe you," she said, "but I don't need to watch it." Erica nodded. That was the last time they spoke for many months. Then came the article. It appeared in the Woodhaven Beacon the following Sunday, tucked between a feature on a pie-eating contest and a front-page drought report. Headline: "She was left behind, but she didn't stay down. Madeline Clark's quiet fight for justice." There was a photo of her behind the counter pouring tea, a soft smile playing on her lips. The article detailed her story: loss, betrayal, recovery. It didn't sensationalize. It honored. Quotes from customers followed. "Her place saved my sanity," Claire said. "She gave me a second chance at reading," Kyle added. "She beat them with grace," Arthur growled. "That's real strength." Madeline read it once, then clipped it carefully and pinned it on the quiet wall beside a child's crayon drawing and a note that read, "Thank you for the warmest cup of silence." She didn't want fame, but truth that she welcomed. Whispering Leaves became something more after that. Not just a shop, not just a sanctuary, a symbol. The customers came in heavier now, shoulders tight, eyes darting, voices hushed. But they left lighter, sometimes with tea, sometimes just with breath, sometimes with a look from Madeline that said, "You're safe here." She changed the menu board to include a new item: resilience brew, towers only served when needed. No one ever ordered it aloud, but sometimes she'd bring it out anyway. setting it gently beside someone whose hands were shaking, or whose face had that hollow tiredness grief wears like perfume, and they'd sip it, and cry, and begin again, one leaf at a time. By late September, the breeze carried hints of cinnamon and wet stone. The leaves along the riverbanks had begun to yellow at the edges. Woodhaven had entered that brief golden pause between summer's farewell and autumn's quiet promise. Inside Whispering Leaves, the bell above the door jingled often. Some were regulars, Claire, Arthur, Kyle, but more were new, travelers, wanderers, people who'd read about the tea shop in the Beacon, or heard whispers of a woman who survived something unspeakable and somehow turned it into sanctuary. They arrived without demands, but often with stories, and Madeline listened. She didn't pry, didn't offer advice unless asked, but her presence was warm-rooted, like sitting beside a fire without words, enough to thaw things inside. They began leaving things behind. A thank-you note scribbled on a napkin, a dried lavender bundle tied with twine, a crumpled Polaroid of a sunset over a lake captioned, "This made me stay." Tommy started keeping a basket beneath the counter just to hold them all. By the end of the second week, it was full. One afternoon, a girl no older than 20 stood in front of the quiet wall, staring at the child's drawing pinned beside the news clipping. She had dark circles under her eyes and a bandage around her left wrist. She didn't speak to anyone, just ordered lemon balm tea and sat in the corner by herself for hours. When she finally rose, she approached the counter slowly. Madeline was wiping down a teacup. She looked up and the girl said, "You don't know me. I came here because I read about you." Madeline nodded gently. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't supposed to be here this week." The girl continued, voice trembling. I had other plans." Silence, then barely above a whisper. "But your place made me want to stay alive a little longer." Madeline didn't flinch. She simply set the towel down, stepped out from behind the counter, and opened her arms. The girl fell into her like rain. That evening, Tommy was on the dock hammering the final plank into a small wooden platform that jutted out over the river. It wasn't fancy, just wide enough for 2 chairs and a woven mat. Madeline brought him a cup of ginger tea. He stood wiping sweat from his brow. Figured the guests could use a space for quiet, meditation, or just staring at the water. Madeline looked at it. "It's perfect." Tommy leaned on the railing beside her. "Never built a sanctuary before." "You just did." They stood there a while listening to the river. Later that night, someone lit a candle on the dock, then another and another, until 5 small flames flickered against the dark water. None of the guests spoke. They didn't need to. The next morning, a little girl named Rosie handed Madeline a drawing. Rosie had been staying with her grandmother while her parents sorted out something Madeline didn't ask about. Divorce, maybe. Grief. Whatever it was, the child had found safety in routine hot cocoa at 10 a.m., a walk to the dock, and crayons at table 5. The drawing was simple Madeline, with gray hair and kind eyes, standing in front of a giant lighthouse made of teacups. Underneath, in large uneven letters, "You are a lighthouse." Madeline smiled so wide it ached. She tacked the drawing right in the center of the quiet wall. Later, after closing, she stood beneath it alone in the glow of the shop's hanging bulbs, hand pressed to her heart. Then, with a deep breath, she walked to the back room and opened the drawer. Leo's watch sat there ticking, not loudly, not urgently, just steadily. She held it for a long time, ran her fingers over the initials on the back. L.C. Leonard Clark. Her lighthouse once. She walked out to the front of the shop, took a nail, and with gentle care hung the watch just above the entryway. Not behind glass, not on a pedestal, but where everyone would see it as they stepped into the tea shop. A marker, a compass, a reminder. That time didn't heal everything, but it made space. The morning rose slowly, hidden behind a veil of thick mist that rolled across the river like breath from another world. The dock was slick with dew, the air cool and quiet. Not a bird sang, not a leaf moved. Madeline stepped out alone. Her steps were slow, deliberate. A shawl wrapped around her shoulders, slippers dampening as they pressed into the soft wood. In her hand, the watch dangled by its leather strap. Worn, familiar. Leonard Clark's initials faintly visible in the soft bronze. The second hand still ticked soft and stubborn, as if time had no idea it had run out. She reached the edge of the dock and stood there, looking out over the still silver surface of the Mississippi. The fog was so dense it seemed to erase the horizon. There was no wind, no sound but the faint lapping of water beneath the wood. Madeline closed her eyes. For a long moment she said nothing, just breathed, deeply, fully. Then she opened them again, stared at the river, and whispered, "Goodbye, Leo." Her fingers moved with a reverence usually reserved for prayer. She undid the clasp, slid the watch from her wrist, held it between her palms like a fragile offering, and let it go. The leather strap brushed against her fingers one last time as the watch fell. It didn't splash. It just vanished into the mist below, swallowed whole like a secret. Down it sank, through slow water, through drifting leaves, through memory. The camera of the world seemed to slow. Under the surface, the watch twisted gently, the reflection of morning light rippling over its face, before it disappeared into shadows. Gone. Time unfastened. Madeline didn't cry. She didn't need to. The weight was gone, and in its absence was something quieter. Not relief, not even peace, but presence. She stood there long enough to feel the morning shift around her, how the air warmed slightly with the promise of sun behind the clouds, how the river made room for her silence, how even the pain had softened like bones mended long ago. Behind her the dock creaked once. She didn't turn around. Then a hand rested gently on her shoulder, rough, calloused, steady. "Tommy." He said nothing at first, just stood there with her. Then he spoke low and calm, "You're not lost." She turned slightly. He looked at her with something between a smile and awe. "You just came home." Her throat caught, and then she laughed, soft light, startled by its own freedom. It was the first time in months she felt her face lift without effort. She looked back at the water. The river didn't take. It carried. That's what Leo would have said. "I didn't think I could let go," she said. "You didn't let go," Tommy replied. "You let it rest." Madeline smiled again, this time without resistance. She turned from the river, her steps slower but firmer now, and walked back toward the shop. Tommy walked beside her. The dock remained behind them, empty but not abandoned. The fog began to lift, and with it the weight of yesterday. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, tucked neatly into the mail slot, between a gas bill and a catalog for gardening tools. No return address. Just her name in careful, hesitant script, Madeline Clark. She recognized the handwriting before she even opened it. Erica. She stood at the counter in the quiet of the shop, steam curling from a pot of ginger tea, and unfolded the paper slowly. Heart steady now, not hardened, but braver. The letter was brief, honest, no flourishes. "Mom, I don't know if you'll ever want to speak to me again, and I won't ask you to. I just want you to know. I understand now. Truly. I see what I became. And I know it wasn't just Simon. It was me. I made my choices. I let fear turn into cruelty and called it necessity. You don't owe me forgiveness. And I won't ask for money, time, or second chances. This isn't a door I'm knocking on, just a light I'm turning on for you wherever you are. Thank you for not becoming like me. I love you. I always did. I just didn't act like it. Erica." Madeline stood still for a long time. She didn't cry. She didn't crumble. She folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the envelope, and slid it into the bottom drawer of her desk, beneath a stack of napkins and tea menus. She didn't respond, but she didn't throw it away either. That weekend, Madeline decided it was time. She pinned a small handwritten sign on the front door of Whispering Leaves. "Special gathering, Saturday at 4 p.m. Tea and truth for women who remember. No RSVP, no fee, no fanfare. Just an invitation." By 3:45, the chairs were almost full. Women of all shapes, stories, and sizes filed in gray curls, creased faces, eyes that had seen too much and too little all at once. Some wore pearls, some wore boots, some walked in proudly, some shuffled like they'd nearly talked themselves out of coming. But they came. Tommy brought out extra folding chairs from the back. Madeline had set a long table near the fireplace, adorned with chamomile sprigs, old poetry books, and lemon scones. No speeches, no formal introductions. Just warmth and quiet music playing from Leo's old radio. She began with a welcome so soft it felt like a blanket. "Thank you for being here," she said. "There's nothing you need to prove, nothing you need to relive. You don't even need to speak, but if you want to, this room will hold you." And then slowly they did. A retired teacher spoke first, voice shaking. "They called me a burden the year I turned 60, said my mind was slipping. I still remember every student I ever taught." A seamstress followed. "I took care of my husband through 3 strokes and 2 bankruptcies. When he passed, my children said, "Now we can sell the house," like I'd expired with him. A nurse hands trembling over her teacup. My daughter told me she loved me, but she didn't want me in her way. She moved across the country and stopped picking up my calls. No one interrupted. No one corrected. Madeline just listened, truly listened, not to fix, not to advise, but to witness. And in that witnessing, something powerful began to bloom. By the time the fifth woman spoke, a shift had taken place. Laughter mingled with tears. Stories spilled out of long-forgotten careers of quiet bravery of hearts that had been dismissed but never stopped beating. Near the end, a tiny woman with bright eyes and a cane cleared her throat. She hadn't said a word all afternoon. Now she leaned forward and said, "I don't get invited places anymore. Not since my husband died. And when I do, people talk around me, like I'm an object, furniture, a memory with feet." The room went still. Then she smiled soft and fierce. "But here I was seen, thank you." Madeline pressed her hand gently. "You were always there," she said. "We just never learned to look properly." After they left, the light in the shop felt different, like the air had been cleared and something sacred remained. Tommy helped stack chairs in silence. When he passed by, he touched her shoulder. Just once. Just enough. "Leo would be proud," he said. Madeline turned toward the window. Outside, the sun dipped low, casting gold onto the river. Inside, she exhaled. Not a sigh. A release. She didn't need a headline. Didn't need her name in print or her story validated by strangers. She didn't need anyone to know what she'd survived or whom she'd forgiven. She didn't even need her daughter's letter to be more than what it was. Because in that moment, in a room full of women who had been silenced, dismissed, and forgotten, she hadn't just served tea. She had made space, and in doing so, she had taken hers. The morning air was still and cool, draped in the soft hush that only early spring could bring. Madeline stepped barefoot onto the porch of whispering leaves, the old wooden floorboards creaking gently beneath her. She made her way to the mailbox like she always did, no hurry, no expectation. But today something was waiting. Among utility bills and catalogs, there was a single envelope. No stamp, no return address. Just her name written in careful script. Madeline Clark. She paused, breath-catching. Back inside, she sat at the counter and opened it. Inside was a single sheet of unlined paper. The words were few. "I chose to live because of you." No signature, no sender. Madeline stared at it. The corners of her eyes stung, and soon tears rolled down her cheeks. Not from sorrow, not from regret, but from the quiet, humbling truth. She had made a difference, even if the world never knew her name, even if no one ever said it out loud. She had saved someone. She folded the letter slowly, gently, and tucked it beneath the tea menu by the register. Not hidden, just resting, just honored. Later that morning, Whispering Leaves quietly reopened for the first tea season. There was no press release, no photographers, no curated playlist or social media hashtag. Just a handwritten sign taped to the front door, "First tea season, come as you are, 10 a.m., and they came. Tommy brought river stones to line the garden beds. Claire brought lemon scones. Kyle played soft chords on his guitar near the dock. The women who had found healing here showed up in scarves and sun hats, sharing stories and folding napkins. Teenagers poured water with care. Even Mr. Arthur, grumpy as ever, smiled. Madeline moved quietly among them. No one needed her to lead. Her presence was enough. She poured, refilled, listened, and laughed. The shop pulsed with warmth, not from lights or heat, but from human closeness. The fragrance of tea rose with the wind. No speeches were made. No past wounds reopened. There was only now. That evening, just before sunset, Madeline stepped outside alone. The breeze was soft, golden light spilling over the river, dancing against the windows of the tea shop. She looked up at Leo's old watch hanging above the door. The hands had long stopped moving. Still she smiled, because time didn't need to pass to matter. She didn't need a clock to tell her that she had arrived, that she belonged, that she was finally at peace. She turned toward the river, whispered, "We're okay now," then turned off the porch light and stepped inside. The screen faded to black. A single voice, steady and certain hers. "I wasn't lost. I was just coming home to myself."